Stepdaughter lied about injury to stay rent-free. I caught her planning with her mom, recorded it, and hubby kicked her out. Now she says I ruined her relationship with her dad. So, a couple of days ago, I decided to switch to the night shift at work because my stepdaughter had moved in with us and we needed to take care of her since she had had an accident and twisted her ankle. My stepdaughter is an adult, she is 22 and has been living away from home ever since she started college, so it's been quite a while. In the past couple of years, she has been working and has been staying in an apartment by herself near her workplace. I have known her for almost 5 years now and I have been married to her father for 3 of those years. Initially, there was some friction between us because at the time that I met her father, her parents had only been divorced for 2 years. So, she was still not ready to accept that her parents were done and were a bit cold towards me, but then, she started getting along with me. Until recently, things had been fine, but then, a couple of months ago, while she was visiting, she got into a huge fight with my husband. He told me about it later and basically, she had been taunting him about how differently he behaved with me and how he had ruined his own marriage with her mother by being stubborn and indifferent. The root cause of most of his troubles in his last marriage was the fact that he was a workaholic and his ex-wife was a little too much of a spendthrift. She wanted him to spend time with her, but he couldn't afford to do that because he had to constantly keep working so that they could have the lifestyle that she wanted. They had been married for a really long time because they had been high school sweethearts. But I guess his ex-wife just couldn't handle the reality that in order to have the lifestyle that she wanted, she would have to let her husband work long hours, or maybe she could change her ways and adjust to a normal life. Her father is a business owner and has always done well for himself, so she was used to a comfortable lifestyle occasionally. She would even borrow money from her family to fund her lifestyle, so my husband became the target of a lot of taunting from his in-laws. So they would end up fighting about how little time he spends with her and how much money she spends. Eventually, it got too much to take, and they decided to part ways because even their daughter was old enough to handle the divorce by then. But after that, when he met me, I guess things started to change, and I would definitely agree that he is absolutely not a workaholic anymore. He spends enough time at home with me and I honestly don't feel neglected at all. But I don't think it's fair for his daughter to blame him for ruining his marriage with her mom, because I think that her mother had an equal part to play in it as well. Anyway, after the fight that they had a couple of months ago, things had been tense between all of us, and his daughter had pretty much stopped visiting altogether because of that fight. But then, she had to move in with us recently since she needed somebody to take care of her, but she was only our guest for 3 days. Initially, she had planned on staying with her mother so she could take care of her, but then, her mom was away on a work assignment and wouldn't be back until the next month. So her mother had contacted my husband, and he had told me about it. I felt kind of bad for her, so I decided to take up the night shift so I could take care of her during the day. My husband did tell me that we could just hire a nurse for her for the time being, but I insisted on it because I believed that spending some time with her would fix all the problems that we had been having so far. I was obviously wrong because even after I was nice to her the entire time when my husband brought her over after the accident, I still found her talking absolute rubbish on the phone with her mother a couple of days back. I came home early from work in the morning one day and I was about to go check up on her, but then, I started hearing her talk about me and my husband on the phone. A couple of seconds later, I realized that she was talking to her mother, and she was referring to us as fools and idiots while laughing along with her mom. I could have confronted her right then, but I decided to take out my phone and start recording instead because whatever it was that she was going to say, I wanted to have proof. It was just a gut feeling, but I thought that I would need it. Anyway, a couple of seconds later, she started talking about how she had already started applying to new places, but she was in no hurry and was ready to fake this injury for as long as needed because she was sick of me getting the life that she and her mother had deserved. At that point, it became pretty clear what was going on and I decided to go out of the house and call my husband immediately to explain to him what I had heard. I even forwarded the recording to him, even though I don't think it would be necessary because obviously he believes me. He was furious on the phone and he told me that he would be back home immediately, and within half an hour, he had shown up. As soon as he was back, he and I decided to confront his daughter together because whatever was going on with her and her mother, it was just unacceptable. When my husband walked into the room and asked her if she was faking her injury, she immediately started denying everything like her life depended on it. When I told her not to lie, she accused me of trying to ruin her relationship with her father, which I knew was going to happen, so I decided to play the recording for her. When I did that, she knew that she was screwed and tried to make up a few lame excuses for it before finally admitting that she had indeed been faking the injury. The real story was that she had been fired from her job a couple of weeks ago for insubordination since she had basically shown up drunk at work, and I could see why that got her fired. And she thought that if she had shared that with us, it would have led to a lot of lectures from her father, and she wasn't willing to deal with that. She did have the money to cover rent for a couple of more months, But she did not want to waste her resources, so she decided that she would move out and stay with a parent instead. Obviously, she wanted to stay with her mom in the beginning, but apparently, her mother is seeing somebody, and they have started living together after 3 months of dating, so they needed some privacy. And that's how we found out that not only had she been lying about her own injury, she had also been lying about her mother having started to work at her grandfather's company and being away on a work assignment. The two of them had cooked up this entire story so they could live with us for free, no questions asked. And the best of all was that I would be here at her beck and call constantly to take care of every need. I guess she had been right about whatever she had been saying on the phone about us being fooled, because we had been focusing way too much on the emotions instead of judging her by her behavior. Me especially, I had gone out of my way to help her out and it hadn't been worth it at all, so I obviously felt like a total idiot. After she shared the real story with us, she started telling us that she did not intend to hurt us, but she just needed a place to crash for free, and she did not want her father to think of her as irresponsible or immature because of the reason she got fired, and neither did she want him to think badly of his ex-wife because she couldn't take her in, which is why she had decided to lie about so many things. She started apologizing to her father, but my husband wasn't having any of it. He told her that if she had come to him with the truth, he would have definitely helped her out, and yes, he might have lectured her a bit, but he still would have let her stay with us and maybe even helped her find a new job. Now, though, after the phone call that I had overheard, there was no chance of that happening, and she was no longer going to be staying with us. She started to try and request him not to kick her out, but there was no changing his mind. I did not say anything either, because whatever I had overheard, it had been really hurtful, since she was just trying to take advantage of us being nice to her. Even if I was able to overlook the fact that she had told her so many lies, there was still the thing that she had said on the phone call, that she was going to make sure that she stayed here for as long as she could because she deserved the same treatment that I was receiving from her father. As if it was my fault that he felt like he could stay at home with me and spend more time with me than he could while he had been married to his ex. It had been a ridiculously stupid thing to say, and it was her bad luck that I had overheard that and passed that message on to her father. But that did not mean that it was all my fault. I had just done what I thought was right. In spite of that, after her father told her that she had to leave the next day, she started screaming at me and telling me that I was responsible for all of this. She even said that I was going to be responsible for my husband's downfall when he finally realized what a huge mistake he was making by choosing me over his family. That comment really got on my nerves, because as far as I was concerned, it was her mother who had always been selfish and constantly hurt my husband and not me. And now, his daughter was going in the same direction. I lost my temper as well, because so far, I had tried my best to be very nice and helpful to her, but she had only taken advantage of our kindness. I told her that I was not surprised that she and her mother had been able to cook up something like this, since it's very evident that both of them are freeloaders and will never learn. I called them both lazy and self-centered, and I told her that at least it was still forgivable that her mother did not seem to care about my husband anymore since he's her ex-husband. But no matter what happens, he is still going to be her father, and it's appalling that she doesn't seem to care about him either. All that she cares about is the money and making full use of her father's generosity, just like her mother had tried to do earlier. She got mad at my implication that she was a gold digger, and I told her that she most definitely was, and so was her mom. So it was not surprising that my husband had decided to leave her, and now, I really think that he should leave his daughter behind as well, because clearly, she doesn't value him. I even said that, as long as I was in his life, I would make sure that they did not ever get to take advantage of him again, even if that meant making sure that he cut his daughter out of his life forever. I had said it in the heat of the moment. I don't think I really meant it, and even if I had, it's not like I could actually enforce it. But my stepdaughter went quiet after that statement and just shut her door for the night. The next morning, even before my husband and I had woken up, she was gone. And we thought that after this, we would not have to deal with any more drama, but now, we have to deal with his ex-wife. She has already had it in for him ever since the divorce was finalized, since she did not get any alimony in spite of trying her best to portray herself as a hardworking som, which she really wasn't. They had a full-time housekeeper whom they could barely afford, even with my husband working overtime, just so his ex-wife wouldn't have to do any work. Obviously somebody like that is not entirely left to alimony, and my husband was lucky to have a lawyer who made sure that he did not have to pour even more money down the drain. Anyway, you get the picture. She's quite vindictive because of that, and as soon as she heard whatever I had said to her daughter, she lost it and has been coming after us ever since. She's been demanding that I apologize to her daughter for being so nasty about everything, and she believes that I had no right to say whatever I did, because this is between her daughter and her family. And since I'm not part of the family, I should have just stayed out of it. I don't even understand what she's on, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm definitely a part of the family, and I have been ever since I started dating my husband. So right now, We have just been going back and forth, and my husband and I have even blocked her, but she still keeps going out of her way to contact us anyway so she can get an apology out of us. My husband's opinions on this have been pretty divided because he does think that whatever I had said was true, but he isn't sure if I had to say that thing about making sure that he cut his daughter out of his life because that sounded very controlling, even if that hadn't been my intention, and he can understand why his daughter took that so hard. And to be honest, I kind of understand where he's coming from. So am I the a-hole for saying that I would make sure that my husband cut his daughter out of his life in the heat of the moment? Update 1. Thank you so much to everybody who commented on my post. I would just like to say one thing: everybody is touchy about their kids. Regardless of how their kids are, I know for a fact that people get emotional when it comes to their children, and my husband is no different. So I don't really mind the fact that my husband is in two minds about what I said to his daughter. If I had been in his place, I would been too. And this is not a problem where he's against me. Both of us are rethinking stuff right now, regarding how we dealt with the situation with his daughter. So I would appreciate it if people did not diss him in the comments. This is not his fault. Anyway, he and I decided to have a talk about it now that it's been a couple of days since my post. I told him that I might have gone a little too far with what I said, but even then, I was not going to be apologized to anybody, and he told me that it was completely fine because after what had happened, he didn't think that I need to apologize to anyone at all. It is his daughter who needs to apologize to him, and most importantly, she needs to apologize to me because I am the one who had decided to actually switch my timings for my work just so I could be there for her and take care of her. Even though he had been planning to just hire a nurse, I had actually gone out of my way to be there for her and fix the situation, but she hadn't even taken that into consideration before behaving like this. I had been out about whatever I had said, about her turning into her mother, and he did not want that because she had always been spoiled and entitled. Even though he had loved her in the past, he could not deny that, and the only reason he had put up with it for so many years was because he loved her. But beyond a certain point, she just became intolerable, and he did not want that to happen to his daughter. He actually started breaking down while talking to me about this because he told me that he had tried really hard to make sure that his daughter turned out to be a good person, but it felt like his ex-wife was undoing all the hard work. He told me that he felt like he was responsible for all of this happening because even though he did not agree with everything that they had said, it was indeed true that he hadn't spent enough time with his family in the past. Now, he thought that maybe if he had, his daughter might have been a different person and he wouldn't be dealing with this kind of trouble right now. I felt really bad for him at the time because honestly, I really don't think it's his fault. He was just trying to provide for his family because otherwise, he would have to become the guy who depends on his in-laws for money because his parents definitely couldn't provide. His in-laws had already humiliated him a lot in the past with a lot of jokes and taunts and stuff, so it was necessary for him to work hard so that his wife would not have to go to her parents for money. If you ask me, she should have just realized that given their income, there was a certain kind of lifestyle that she just could not afford, and it was certainly fine because at least they were comfortable. But she wanted luxury and everything fine in the world, and yet, she did not want to work for any of it. On top of that, even when her husband was trying to fulfill all that she wanted, she was still ungrateful and wanted more from him, like his time as well. She should have been more understanding, and maybe then, her daughter would have followed in her footsteps, and who knows? Maybe they even would have been able to make that marriage work. I told my husband that I could understand why he thought he was responsible for everything, but the truth was that if anything, he couldn't hold himself responsible for all of this even if he wanted to because he had barely even been there. It was his ex-wife who was doing all of this, and his daughter was just blindly following her. Even now, given the circumstances, his ex-wife had the opportunity to be a good mother and teach her daughter from wrong. No matter what her age is, it's obvious that my husband's daughter needs some guidance. But instead of teaching her to do the right thing, his ex-wife has all sorts of messed up ideas, and no matter how much he tries to be good to his daughter, she's just gonna keep messing it up for him. After a point, I feel like there are some lessons that you just have to learn for yourself, and his daughter needs to realize that her mother definitely does not have her best interest at heart. She is only using her daughter as a weapon against her ex-husband, and that is it. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was the truth. So now, either his daughter could come back to him on her own and apologize, or she could choose to stay with her mother and do whatever it is that she wanted to do. I know that she has probably felt betrayed by the fact that her father decided to change from me, but he can't overlook the fact that I'm very different from her mother. Anyway, we decided that we were going to ignore whatever it was that they were saying because there was simply no point in arguing with them right now. Update 2. So, it has been 3 weeks since my last update. About 4 days after my last update, my husband's ex-wife showed up at our house, demanding an explanation as to why we were ignoring her. I was the one who had opened the door, and I told her to her face that neither my husband nor I were interested in speaking to her. But she did not leave, she just ignored me and pushed me so she could get inside the house, and then, she started yelling for my husband. It was really disrespectful, so I decided to tell her off that instant because she had no right to come and push me around in my own house. That led her to an argument because she started yelling about how this was between her and her ex-husband and this was about her family, so I had no right to be talking to her in the first place, just like I did not have a right to be speaking to her daughter the way that I did earlier. Before my husband could even get to the living room, I had already started arguing with her because I had had enough of her. I told her that this used to be her house and her family, but now that I am married to her ex-husband, I am very much a part of the family. And in case she doesn't remember, it was me who had been taking care of her daughter while she had been faking her injury. So I had actually earned the right to say what I wanted and she was nobody to stop me. That argument would have gone on even longer, but my husband intervened and told her to leave because he did not have anything to say to her, and he did not want to hear from her either. And then, she totally started freaking out at us and started screaming about how unfair he was being. She started yelling at him about how he was being unreasonable, and that his priority should be his daughter and not me. But he had made it very clear that he did not want to speak to her, so he did not even respond to anything that she was saying, and after a while, she just seemed to run out of steam and started cursing at us before leaving. We were not very affected by that, but then, she said that she was going to make sure that my husband spent the rest of his life without his daughter now, as a punishment. That literally proved what I had been saying all along, that she did not care about her daughter at all. She just wanted to use her as a weapon against her ex-husband to get back at him. So after that interaction, we decided to speak to his daughter and let her know exactly what her mother had said. We explained to her that she was being used by her mom so she could get revenge on her dad, and out of anger and resentment, she was allowing herself to get used. I also told my husband to talk about what he had been feeling all along, because sometimes, it's important for kids to know what their parents are going through so they can take off their rose-colored glasses and look at them as normal people instead of putting them up on a pedestal all the time. So that's what he did. He talked about his struggle with money and his ex-wife and how he had really tried to make it work, but he just couldn't because she was too unreasonable sometimes. He also acknowledged the fact that he hadn't been perfect either. He had spent way less time with his family than he should have, and he could understand why she felt so distant from him and closer to her mother, but he reminded her that if her mother had had her best interests at heart, she wouldn't have encouraged her to lie and do such messed up stuff. The factor remains that she was just trying to manipulate her daughter against him, and it was just a petty tactic. He basically poured his heart out in that message, and then, we waited for her to respond. Several days passed and we almost gave up on her, but then, a couple of days ago, she responded to that message and said that she was really sorry about whatever she had done. She apologized for behaving like a brat and said that she had just been feeling very lost ever since the divorce, because even though she had been in her teens at the time, it still hadn't been any easier. And then, the realization that her father had been willing to change for me, but not for her mother, it just made her feel like their family was not worth much to him. She acknowledged the fact that he had been feeling very lost, and she did realize that whatever her mother had been telling her to do so far, it had all been very wrong, and in the past couple of weeks, she and her mom had been fighting a lot over this as well, because she was just very confused about what was right and what wasn't. After reading the message from her dad, though, she felt terribly guilty and she wanted us to give her a second chance. So we have invited her over for dinner this weekend so we can sort it all out and clear the air between us. Update 3. Hey, so dinner actually went surprisingly well. She showed up on time with a bunch of flowers for me and 4 boxes of chocolates, which I thought was going a little overboard, but I really appreciated it. As soon as she was inside, she started apologizing to both of us and told us that she was really sorry about her actions. Then, she had a bit of a tearful hug with her dad, and even then, she couldn't stop apologizing, so even I ended up tearing up, and then we had a family thing going on. Finally, she started telling us what she had been going through in the past couple of weeks after that huge fight that we had, and she left. Apparently, contrary to what we had been thinking, she hadn't actually been living with her mother for the past couple of weeks because her mom had made it very clear to her that she was living with her boyfriend right now and she did not want her in her privacy. So she had been living with a friend and applying for jobs while speaking to her mother on the phone on and off. She had really given a lot of thought to what I had said in the heat of the moment that day, and even though I apologized for being so harsh, she told me that I really didn't need to apologize because she told me to reserve it. In fact, every word that I had said, it had been all true, and that's why it had hurt her so much. When she finally had that realization, she started thinking about reaching out to us and apologizing, but her mother totally forbade her from doing that, and that's when she started fighting with her mom because she started suspecting that maybe she was just being used. And after receiving that message from her father, her doubts were confirmed and she decided that she was going to cut her mom out of her life because if it's just getting very toxic, then there's no point in keeping in touch. Besides, she wanted to wholeheartedly make it up to us, and she couldn't do that while still keeping her mother involved in her life because she would just never allow it and keep looking for opportunities to stir the pot and create drama. She shared with us that even during the divorce, her mother had been brainwashing her against her dad, and that's why she had been so unhappy when my husband started dating me. But when she finally started getting around to getting along with me, her mother seemed angry with that as well and started doubling down on how terrible her father had always been and started manipulating her into believing that the reason their marriage had failed first because her father did not value his family and would have much rather gone out with other women because he was bored of his family and life. That's the kind of person that her mom made my husband out to be, so it's no wonder that it was so easy to manipulate her since her relationship with her dad had already been pretty distant because he was hardly ever around anyway. So her mom took advantage of that distance and pushed them even further away from each other, which is what led to all the drama. Thankfully, now, they are planning on patching things up and I'm really happy for them. She has apologized to me as well, so there is no bad blood here because honestly, she's so much younger than me that I can't even hold this against her. Everyone has been young and stupid at some point, and she has had a difficult few years in the past as well, so I can understand where all of this is coming from. I'm just glad that they have decided to work it out now.